Relax with us and savor the taste of great Cajun seafood at the newly renovated Don Seafood Restaurant with big screen TVs and private meeting rooms too. And of course, great food. From steaks to potatoes to charbroiled oysters. Hot on the grill, ready to roll, and seasoning to spice it up. What's your spice of life? Don's mine, and it should be yours. And a pleasant good evening to you, Ken Trahan from Don Seafood at 4801 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. We're between Clearview and Transcontinental. And of course, we're here for sportsNOLAtv to break down the NFC and AFC championship games. We'll talk about the Pelicans as well, and we'll talk about decor and behavior when we get to our hot seat segment. And we'll do so with an outstanding panel per usual. Our guys that get it done each and every week. You can depend on them. You can trust them. You can rely on them. And you can listen to them be wrong all the time. Torrace Small, it's so good to have you with them. I'm just kidding. How are you, my friend?
Hey, how we doing, Ken? And happy MLK Day out there to everyone. Go out and tell somebody you love them today. You guys, I love you guys.
That's a beautiful thing. I feel very close to you, considering the fact that I sit next to you every week. Brian Allee-Walsh of sportsNOLA.com, of course, with us as well. Brian, good evening to you.
Dr. Trahan, it's always a pleasure. I don't know how to follow that introduction. I love you too, man. I love you too, man.
No, I love
you too. Love abounds.
That's what the red is for.
That's right.
It's a beautiful thing. Pro Football Hall of Famer Rickey Jackson, who I know has some love for everyone as well, has his say now. Rickey, good evening to you.
Good evening, Ken. I tell you what, man, we all of us got red on up here, these three over here, and I tell you, man, it's blood, you know, for some teams who lost, and it's great for the teams who won. But I'm happy for Peyton Manning, New Orleans boy, yes. Great boy, Archie Manning's son. All of us love him.
It's all good. I didn't get the dress code. I'm sorry. It was nothing intentional. Obviously, it just happened this way. You guys forgive me? Is it
yes,
okay?
Absolutely. We love you, man.
We love you. Love and forgiveness in this room today.
We got some hugs coming up, I think. It's all good. When we return, we'll take a look at highlights of the conference championship games, the AFC championship game, the NFC championship game, and then we'll break them down as we continue with sportsNOLAtv from Don Seafood, where the steak is full of crab meat and the crab is stuffed. Look at the crawfish. sportsNOLAtv. Twist of irony for the Manning brothers, obviously a chance for the other brother to win on his brother's home field, and that would be obviously a tremendous accomplishment if it should happen. And oh, by the way, Peyton's trying to win for John Elway, who was castigated in his career for not winning the big one until he won too late in his career, and Manning is trying to win his second for the same guy, John Elway. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv from Don Seafood at 4801 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. We talk first about the AFC championship game, where the Denver Broncos punted one time in the entire game in beating New England 26-16. Brian, this game was not as close as the score would indicate. Again, one punt, 500 and plus yards, 400 yards passing for Peyton Manning. They had a great game plan. They executed it perfectly, and Manning played flawlessly.
Absolutely. That's the word right out of my mouth, Kenny. Peyton played as well as you can play in an important game, and we were talking about this off air. The offensive and defensive lines for Denver control that game. I went back and looked. I think they still haven't touched Peyton Manning. There were no sacks and no hits. Now we're talking about a championship game against the second best team in the conference. They didn't lay a hand on Peyton Manning. Incredible.
And the fact that Aqib Talib got hurt early in that game, Torrance, was a factor. It's not the reason that Denver won, but it certainly made things easier for the Broncos and Peyton Manning.
Oh, yes, definitely. And Peyton went directly at the new guy that came in. And that's the results that you get. When you lose a top player, you're supposed to attack the new guy that come in. And that's the sign of a good quarterback. Know who to attack and when to attack. Unlike in the NFC game, they went at the wrong person at the end of that game.
Rickey, on the other side, Tom Brady's great. Everyone acknowledges the fact that he's one of the top three quarterbacks of all time and richly deserves those accolades. And yet he missed some opportunities in this game. He had 3 or 4 opportunities with receivers open and did not hit them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's going to happen. I mean, he didn't have a great day earlier in the ball game. He came back and showed you that he's a great quarterback. But just like Terrence was saying earlier, I mean, Denver's secondary played a whole lot better than New England's secondary. New England acted like they were leaning into the ball game. And that was the difference. I mean, they got pass rusher, wasn't nobody rushing the passer. Linebackers didn't do anything. Quarterback had a great day for, you know, them. So that made Tom Brady look bad because of what Peyton was doing. But, you know, Tom Brady, you still got to take your hat off to him, a great quarterback.
Brian Pete Prisco of CBSSports.com. I don't agree with everything he says. I know he's not a huge fan of the Saints, but I thought he was spot on with one comment he put out there via Twitter yesterday, and that was, when Tom Brady loses, it's the team. When Peyton Manning loses, it's him. I really think that's accurate when it comes to the criticism that Peyton Manning unjustly receives. And I raised this to you intentionally.
Yes. You asked the right guy. Let's hear this.
Listen, all I know is this, is that it was a beautiful day in Denver and Peyton played beautifully. And if he continues to play that way in New York, he's going to have a second Super Bowl championship. Now, you can't argue with that. And I agree with Pete. And I do agree with that assessment, is that, and you know what? That has hounded him even from his days at Tennessee, Kenny. I really do. I think there's a certain bias against Peyton Manning in this country.
But you know what, though, Brian? I seen yesterday Belichick going to the defensive coordinator and trying to tell him to figure out stuff that he couldn't figure out. Because, first of all, he didn't line the right defense up to go after Peyton Manning. He was so afraid of Peyton Manning throwing the ball till he never would blitz him and never would line up 6, 7 men up to go after him. And that's what happens. When you give Peyton the time, he's going to find his open man. And that's what they did yesterday.
And in the first game, they blitzed Peyton a lot.
Right.
This game, they stayed back. They out-coached themselves this game, and that's what happened. And Peyton exposed it. When they got back into a 2 deep, he ran the ball. When they came up, he passed the ball. And the thing about him, he knows when you're weak. He knows where you're weak. He knows when to do things. Just a great showing by him.
And he got a great offensive coordinator. He gave him 2 plays to work with, and you can see, man, when you get pick the right one.
Absolutely.
Belichick acknowledged that afterwards. He said he called Peyton's play calling just stupendous. I mean, he checked into the right place.
There's a mutual admiration society between those two. Manning gave Belichick the highest praise during the week, and I know he was sincere about that, and I'm quite sure Belichick was sincere about Manning as well. Let's take a look at the numbers from Denver's victory over New England. 507 total yards. They rushed for 107, which is respectable, but look at the other side. Held New England to 64 after one went off the previous week. Passing yards, 400 for Manning, and then the big number, turnovers. It didn't happen. Third down conversions, 7 of 13. New England was good as well, but look at time of possession, dominated by New England. Bottom line, Ricky, if you don't give Tom Brady enough at-bats, he's not going to hit home runs.
Oh, man, New England lost some great players during the year, too. I mean, they lead on defense. They lost the big boy, you know, up front who would have stopped some of these runs and stuff. So Terrence know how much that means. When you lose somebody up front that been the caliber of the team for years, and like they lost Wolfhard, that made a big difference in that whole defensive line. And since he's been gone, you can see people been able to run up the middle when he used to take 2 guys on.
Well, I agree with that, but then again, Denver, they lost Von Miller. They lost their best cornerback. They lost Dumerville before the season even started. So this defense has had to mix and match too. And they've done a pretty good job of doing so. You hope they've got enough left in the tank, Brian,
you know
heading into that Seattle game. Yeah, right.
One thing too, Brian, when you lose certain players, some players you want to lose. You can look at the Saints team. The Saints lost some players that really lost some players that, you know, they needed to lose because some of the guys behind them was better. So that's the case in Denver, I'm telling you.
They call it pruning. Sometimes when you're pruning, you get rid of some things. So other things can bloom.
Right.
You know, arguably, Belichick did one of his better coaching jobs this year. Just to address what you said, Ricky.
Yes.
You know, he kept that team together. They pieced people in there and they filled holes. They did a good job. For them to get to the championship game, I think speaks volumes.
I agree. They do a great job every year. Okay, the NFC Championship game won by the Seattle Seahawks over the San Francisco 49ers. So many places we could go with this one, Brian, but it's really like this. The great word says, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Colin Kaepernick certainly fit that description. he took for 3 quarters, and he gave it away in the 4th quarter with the game on the line because San Francisco was the better team much of the day, but not when it mattered.
Yeah, and you know what? You find out that when you flush Kaepernick to his left, that's when he seems to have more troubles than if you let him get to his right. All of his turnovers came, I think, to his left, and that's study. And look, Seattle is a dominant team at home. You guys may disagree with me. I still think Frisco's a better team. They just weren't better yesterday when it mattered.
No, I can agree with that assessment. The thing with Kaepernick is a young guy still learning the game. He has to know when to do certain things. Unlike Peyton Manning saw a star cornerback go down, he attacked that corner. He has to know what part of the game, it's critical times. There's always critical times in certain games. It's critical times, and you have to know and when to take advantage of it. And I don't think he took advantage of those times.
Special teams are always important, Ricky. In this game, James muffs a punt. Baldwin has a gigantic kickoff return for Seattle. In a close game, kicking game makes a big difference.
Well, you know, the whole difference in that ball game is when the punter was punting the ball and the referee gave him a 5-yard penalty instead of giving him a 15-yard penalty. That was the whole game changer. Right there, San Francisco get the ball back with a first down. Now you got a whole different ball game. Plus they had the lead and stuff. But once, you know, the 5-yard penalty, they still kept the ball. You know, that changed the game around.
They missed the call. Yeah. Would have given San Francisco good field position. Instead, Seattle gets in. They go down and score a touchdown. It was a terrible missed call, completely misinterpreted. Bad call, but it was one of several bad calls in this game. By the way, all of them went against San Francisco. You want to lop on top of that. Of course, the obvious one with the fumble that Bowman recovered, which was not overruled. It worked out in the end, but it was a terrible missed call by everybody there. How can you not see that? But then go back to the call on Carlos Rogers for pushing a receiver out of bounds before the half when the receiver's still in bounds, and all he did was push him. And they call a personal foul. Why is that big? Because it was 4th down. San Francisco would have had the ball outside their own 40-yard line with about 30 seconds left and a chance to go get a field goal. Instead, they put it back 15, and they just run the clock out. Then you get the call on Dante Whitner. Don't you think reputation figures into that just a bit, Brian, when you look at that call? Because the receiver changes his angle when he's about to get hit. How do you avoid that? It was shoulder pad to shoulder pad. Does he get a barely glancing blow with the hand across the helmet? Yes, but because the receiver moved.
Kenny, that is the most subjective call there is in the game right now. And we talked about this, is that coaches lose jobs. Players lose spots on rosters because of those kind of calls. The NFL cannot afford to have those calls made in critical games like this.
They affected the game. They really did.
My wife even said it. The officials affected the outcome of that game. It's
big time. Well, we want to, Torrace, I'll let you comment in a moment. Let's take a look at some of the stats, though, from the NFC Championship game. Total yardage, how about that? Isn't that amazing? Dead even. Kind of reflected the game, didn't it? Passing yard edge to Seattle. Russell Wilson, I thought, played a solid game after that turnover on the first play from scrimmage. 3rd down conversions were tough to come by. Time of possession was virtually even. This is an even game, Torrace.
Yeah, the teams are even. If you look at their quarterbacks, you look at the defense, you look at the running game, you look at the receivers, it's pretty much dead even. The coaching styles, although a little different, but basically the same. And that's what we got. We got a great game out of it. Now I just wish the officials didn't play a bigger part in it. Yeah. But the one thing I think they should do in the league, if you can challenge a play, challenge anything. Yeah. I think if you got to, you should be able to challenge anything, not just certain things. You should be able to challenge it all.
And that was the rule yesterday. They couldn't challenge the replay, couldn't have nothing to do with that. So that made it different in the game. And I tell you what, man, it left a sour taste in the coach's mouth. He didn't want to address it because he didn't want to get fined or anything. But replacement referees, I feel like did better than those guys did yesterday.
Harbaugh handled himself well.
You know, the one thing about Kaepernick and Wilson, Russell Wilson didn't play well, has not played well in both playoff games, but he hasn't hurt his team. Kaepernick hurt his team, like Kenny said, as well as he helped, he hurt. 5 of his 10 interceptions have come against the Seahawks defense.
6 now, actually.
Yeah, 6 now. You can't
Plus
do that.
the fumble, where he held the ball too long. So
that made a difference yesterday.
Yeah, turnovers did. That was it. It was all about turnovers.
Turnovers 3-1.
We'll take a timeout here, and we'll continue in just a moment. Coming up, our hot seat segment. You won't want to miss that, about proper decor and behavior for an NFL football player when Sports NOLA TV continues on WHNO, Channel 20 from Don Seafood. Oh, are you kidding me? Bring it on. my sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening. Pete Carroll will coach the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl, and a decade after winning a college national championship game at USC, he's in the pros doing the same thing. How many coaches have won both a college national championship and a Super Bowl in their careers? Good question. I'll give you a hint. It's more than one. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv from Don's Seafood in Metairie, 4801 Veterans Boulevard is the address between Clearview and Transcontinental, and it doesn't get any better than Don's. And the New Orleans Saints can get better, but they had a better year. They won 12 games, they got to the playoffs, won their first ever road playoff game in franchise history. So there is obviously something to build upon. If they can have another offseason like they had last year, they will be where they want to be. Probably on a level par with Seattle and San Francisco, the teams to beat in their conference, and Carolina perhaps to a slightly lesser degree. So where the Saints are concerned, they have a number of free agents that they're going to have to contemplate doing something with. Here's a list of those free agents. You see them on screen: Graham Street, De La Puente, Jenkins, Harrelson, Graham, Meacham, Brown, McCown, Vilma, Herring, Humber, Dawson, Coleman, and Pugh. And then the restricted free agents: Collins, Morgan, Bush, and Johnson. Okay, Brian, addition. Who do you keep most notably and why?
Well, besides Jimmy Graham, Kenny, my second guy would be Malcolm Jenkins. And that may not necessarily be in agreement here at the dais, but I think Malcolm has proven he's a starter in this league. He plays well enough. Can they improve that position? Yeah, they can improve that position. They can improve a lot of positions. But I think Malcolm Jenkins has the kind of defensive abilities that can still help this team. He would be my second guy.
I can agree with that, but I want to look at the offensive line. You know, we have to look at one of these guys, Street, De La Puente, and Brown. We have to look at those guys because that's three of your starters that started this year at least. How are you going to replace three guys on the offensive line? I think you have to address that with the money that we're paying Drew and the licks that he took this year.
Well, I mean, you got to keep Graham, and I like Jenkins. You know, you want to find a way to keep him, but like Terrence saying, you got to get that offensive line together. I mean, that's the whole key of you trying to protect Drew Brees, first of all, and that's what they need to do. Work on that offensive line, get those guys right.
You know, Kenny, I tell you what, the Saints officials have done this forever. If they can't reach an agreement with De La Puente, Zach Strief, Charles Brown, I think Charles Brown, to be perfectly honest with you, I think they might just kind of scoot him out the door. The other two, they want to keep them, but I would assume that those guys are going to ask for big-time money, and this club is not prepared to pay them big-time money. They've got guys on their current roster. I speak of Bryce Harris. I think Tim Lolito. These are guys. Would they be my frontline guys? No, they wouldn't be. But this club has done a good job of finding kind of second-line offensive linemen and put them in the spots to make them work.
Well, that's been their history, but it did not work as well this year. Record number of sacks, record number of hits on Brees. Obviously, they've got to address that and get better. I think as you look at what's beyond Jimmy Graham, whom we all agree is essential to be part of this team moving forward, I think the next person on that list clearly is Zach Strief. Zach Strief was probably their most consistent offensive lineman this year, talking to the people that know on a regular basis. Plus, he's a team captain. He's a natural leader on this football team, and he's universally respected by his teammates and by his quarterback, by the way, Drew Brees. I think for those reasons, he's clearly essential. Brian De La Puente is a good technician. He gets beat by bigger, physical guys on a regular basis. This is a guy that if you can, you'd like to replace him, but you can't let him go unless you have someone to replace him. Therefore, I think they'll put a premium on trying to keep him at a very affordable price. Beyond that, as you look at that list, is there anyone essential? I think Paris Harrelson is certainly a guy that is expendable with Victor Butler coming back. Certainly Charles Brown, who has been mentioned. Malcolm Jenkins, that's a real debate because Malcolm Jenkins is not a playmaker. He never has been and apparently never will be based upon the sampling we have. But he is a competent NFL player, and you need to have competent players until you can get better. Roman Harper's under contract. Malcolm Jenkins is not. I believe one will be here and one won't be here, one way or the other next year, with Kenny Vaccaro on board and taking over, and Raphael Bush, who's only going to get better.
Kenny, I tell you what I think is important is signing some of those free agents. I think it's also trying to restructure contracts of guys who are already under contract, because they're anywhere from 10 to 12 million over the cap right now. The projected cap's anywhere from 126 to 128. So they're going to have to find room not only to sign Jimmy Graham, but other guys that are key to keep on this roster.
Well, I agree with you. Let's take a look now at the off-season calendar, and of course there is no such thing as being off if you're in the NFL. Of course, you can designate franchise and transition players starting next month, about a month from now. Combine coming up in late February, then unrestricted free agent period begins March 8th. League year begins March 11th. Off-season workouts begin April 21st. NFL draft May 8th through 10th, a different time frame this year. And of course, this Senior Bowl going on this week. That's where all the Saints folks are this week, Ricky. And obviously, it's an important time for evaluation. Saints had a really good offseason last year, and it starts right now with having a good offseason this year.
Yeah, I mean, you get a chance to go out there and evaluate those guys, but the whole key going to be to trying to find the guys who's not up there. I mean, you're going to get your draft guys from there, but the whole team, building your football team is to find the guys like from Southern, Grambling, and all those schools who's not going to get drafted. Find you some good players in that bracket. That's what you got to be able to do.
Yes, and that's the one thing the Saints have been great at, finding those late round gems late in the round. That's something they need to focus on and continue to focus on. But definitely we need to go and we need to look at the offensive line. We need to look at some cornerbacks. I think those two areas we really need to focus at. I don't know what's up there at the Senior Bowl right now, but hopefully they can see something that we can use this year.
I find it curious that A.J. McCarron is not playing in the Senior Bowl. I find that very curious. And it's a position I'm sure we'll discuss as we go forward here on the show. How about looking at your potential quarterback in this draft too? Drew's not getting any younger. Happy birthday, Drew, 35 on the 15th. He's not getting any younger. That's a position you may want to address in this draft.
Yeah.
Depending on what's out there. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, it's obviously all about what's out there and when you're drafting. They have picks in the 1st through 6th rounds. You could conceivably get a guy in the 4th or 5th round that has a chance. Who knows? If there's a guy in the 2nd round that's too good to pass up who looks really, really good, well, then maybe you have to take a flyer there. There are plenty of quarterbacks that have 1st-round grades this year.
Oh, yes. There's some great quarterbacks out there. There's some mobile quarterbacks out there as well, with the game changing a little bit. You have a lot of these guys, not only they can throw the ball, but they're mobile. And I think that's something that we definitely can use.
I tell you what, Terrence, I got 2 on the team who I ain't never seen play yet, so I like to see them 2 play first.
It's a couple people you don't want to be behind. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, he's so happy to go down.
Yeah,
but
Brady did for 1
Tom
year.
Brady,
Yeah.
you don't want to get behind those guys because you don't see the field often.
Who could ever name Peyton Manning's backup quarterbacks?
No,
I mean, who could name them?
He didn't want to swings.
Well, it is a valid point, though.
Yeah.
You do have to look at that position at some point. Obviously, it's Luke McCown and Ryan Griffin are the backups right now. And you're right, Ricky. We don't know really anything about Ryan for sure. Luke has not played enough in this system to know what he can do. So, it's just a thought, and at some point they're going to have to address it.
When we return in just a moment, what is proper behavior and decor for an NFL football player following a game? We'll talk about it on our Hot Seat segment as we continue with sportsNOLaTv from Don Seafood in Metairie, where the people are enjoying the food and enjoying the conversation, and we're enjoying it too, on WHNO. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening. How many coaches have won both a college national championship and a Super Bowl in their career? Think same team. Think successors. Think to the west, the Dallas Cowboys, Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer. They each did it, and they each had the triplets to build their franchise upon, and they each were able to do so by winning an NFL championship. Seems like a long time ago for the owner of the Cowboys, who hasn't come close to anything like that ever since. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLaTv from Don Seafood in Metairie. And it is time now for our Hot Seat segment. And today's hot seat segment is one that's hot. And we put Brian Allee-Walsh on the hot seat first to ask him about proper decor and behavior. And this obviously surrounds the topic of the day everywhere, Richard Sherman's behavior immediately following Seattle's victory over San Francisco. Was it appropriate, inappropriate, why, or why not? Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Trahan. My initial thoughts to hearing Richard Sherman being interviewed by Aaron Andrews after the game yesterday was, my goodness, this is gangster rap right here in living color. And then the more I've thought about it over the last, 16 hours is that, you know what? We as television fans, football fans watching television, watching these guys in combat for 3.5 hours, I don't think we should expect, we can expect more, but because Richard Sherman spoke his mind, he didn't use any cuss words. Did he say what people wanted to, a lot of people wanted to hear him say? No, he didn't. But you know what? He's coming off a field after making a great play. There is a lot more baggage and a lot more issues than anybody that was watching this game probably knew about regarding Crabtree and Sherman. So he was speaking to an issue that developed over the summertime and through the season, and he wasn't misaddressing. He didn't be disrespectful to Aaron Andrews, in my opinion. Did he say what we wanted to hear him say? Absolutely not. As long as television wants to interview these players immediately after a game, all right, they better be prepared to handle these kind of comments. But as far as him being Richard Sherman, this is who he is. And if he was much calmer after the ball game in the locker room, after you've had that 10 to 15 minute cooling off period. But this is a guy that's gone through a hell of a game, and he was just speaking his mind.
Yes. I think Sherman is a great player. Great player, from what I hear, is a very smart guy. Went to Stanford.
Stanford?
Yes, went to Stanford. Great guy. I love the passion. I love the emotion. And I think you're right. After a game, you caught him in his passion. You caught him in his emotion and all. He just made a hell of a play. I guess he kind of got into a verbal disagreement with Crabtree, and then you put the mic in right in front of his face. We were taught that after a game, once we came in, get our thoughts together, because they're going to be coming into an interview either after a win or a loss, so you know how to respond. And you were right. If they're not going to give him time to cool down, these are some things that you're going to get. Was it right? No, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right to call out a player. Now, if you're talking about yourself, you can blow yourself up all you want. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's great for a player to have confidence in himself, believe in himself, especially defensive backs. They have to be confident and believe in themselves. But to call out other players specifically, I don't agree with that. I don't think you should call out a player. I think you can talk without directly talking about a player. Belichick did it sort of when he talked about Wes Welker. He said the receiver, he talked about the receiver without directly calling him out. And I think you can do things like that without calling out a name. But the passion and emotion, hey man, I love that. That gets the rest of the team. That is him. Be that. But I just think it's wrong to call out a player.
Well, you know, my whole thing, Terrence, is this. I'm the type of guy like Sherman. If you call me out all week long, Crabtree don't call Sherman out. So now in the game, it's time for you to back up what you said about me all week long. And now if you can't back it up and I go out there and bust you around and throw you around and show you that I'm the better player after the game, why not tell you what you told me all week long? So that's the way I feel about it. I mean, you know, you can sugarcoat it and say what you want to say. They talked about him all week long. So when he got his chance to show them how to play football and make some big plays, he went up to Crabtree and showed him that. You talk about me all week, where you at now? And that's what he basically did. He more protected himself and showed him that, you know, you don't talk about nobody who can play. Crabtree said that he was sorry, he couldn't play, that he was terrible. So he showed him in the game what he can do.
You know, I tell you what, I think what happens here is that people want to have both things. They want to have immediate access, but they want this kind of language that satisfies everybody out watching the game. And that isn't the case. If you're going to put a mic in front of a guy who's playing this kind of physical game, you're going to get these kind of reactions sometimes. Would we have liked a Peyton Manning kind of response or a Terrell Davis kind of response? Perhaps so. But you know what? This is just Richard Sherman being Richard Sherman. And if you think it's bad now or good now, we got 2 weeks of this.
Yeah. Just because you use slang doesn't make you a thug. You know, a lot of people think because you use slang and hip-hop terms, you know, it doesn't make you a thug.
Doesn't make you a thug. No. So much to chew on here. Where do you want to start? First and foremost, I think Brian's point about cooling off period is a very wise point to make. Torrace and Rickey played the game. Passion is a huge part of this game. If you don't have it, you're going to get whipped. If you don't play with passion, you're going to get whipped. As soon as the game's over, you're still boiling. The game was just played. So obviously, tensions will run high, emotions will run high. I'm not excusing what Sherman said or did. The NFL suddenly became WWE as soon as this game ended, and I'm quite sure that's not the image they want to purvey. But forget about the image. It's all about players. I heard a comment here about he didn't show any disrespect. Yes, he did. He totally disrespected the reporter, Erin Andrews, to the point of literally scaring her, it appeared, and that was inappropriate. What did she have to do with anything between him and Crabtree? Rickey says this guy hounded him all week. He should tell him anything. Great, tell him. Why do you have to tell a national television audience and make yourself out to be some kind of idiot? Which is what he did, in my opinion. When you call a guy out like that on national television, you're degrading yourself. You're disrespecting yourself. You're disrespecting the game. I hear this old school, new school. This isn't old school, new school. This isn't black or white. It's not racial. It's all about common decency and how you handle yourself. If you wanted to tell somebody, I proved today what I thought I could do all day long, just take a look at what happened. That's cool. But why you have to say I'm the best? Nobody had to tell me Rickey Jackson was the best. I knew he was the best. Rickey Jackson didn't have to say he was the best over and over again or degrade an opponent in the process. It was unnecessary. Obviously, this guy calmed down later. Obviously, you say he's a smart guy from Stanford. He wasn't too smart in that circumstance, so people are going to choose sides. But you can do things respectfully, regardless of the circumstance or the outcome. And oh, by the way, I'm a New Testament guy. I turn the other cheek. When we return in just a moment, we'll talk about the Pelicans and more as Sports NOLA TV continues on WHNO Channel 20. I was here last Tuesday night. Every night's a great special. You can't miss. I had the seafood platter. You talk about a ridiculous amount of food. It's absurd. There's still a little bit sitting in my refrigerator, and that's not an indictment of Don's. To the contrary, it's an endorsement of Don's because there's so much on it. You never stop eating. It's remarkable. Come by on a Tuesday night. Get that seafood platter. All you can eat. It's awfully good at Don's Seafood. Ken Trahan, Sports NOLA TV from Don's, 4801 Veterans in Metairie. The Saints had a good season. The Pelicans are not having a good season on the court or off the court. On the court, the team's lost 8 straight games, and it's pretty much already an afterthought as we look at what's happening where the Pelicans are concerned. In the last 2 weeks, injuries have just decimated this team. Ryan Anderson, herniated disc. Drew Holiday, stress fracture tibia. Jason Smith, knee cartilage injury. Tyreek Evans has had an ankle. He's returned. They reportedly have made a trade to get a player, a guard, who's somewhat inconsequential, but that's not been confirmed as of yet. And a New York report has them shopping Tyreek Evans and Eric Gordon around. They play 2 home games this week, Tuesday against Sacramento at 7 p.m. and then Sunday against Orlando at 5 against 2 bad teams that ostensibly you should beat. We'll see if they do. But Brian, at this point in time, you hate to say this, you almost hope they lose the rest of the way.
Yeah, Kenny, you know what, you watch this team and they remind me of last year's team. Anthony Davis, he's a beast. But this team they can't finish games. They often will build leads, have leads at halftime, lose a little bit third, and then lose it in the fourth. I watched the Houston game, and that was prototypical of this season. They can't hold a lead against a good team. They don't have closers. And Kenny, they're 1-8 in January. Like you said, they've got 2 good chances to win this week at home. They've got 6 games left in this month. And you know what? These guys, they're going to be without these players for quite some time, both Smith and Anderson. And unless they go get help, and Holiday, right? Unless they go get help, this club is going to have a hard time winning 25 games.
Yes, we need bodies. We need some more bodies in here. We need size. This team started off with a bunch of guards. We had our bigs shoot from the outside. We had nobody to fight down low. I think we need to shake it up. We need to shake it up. If we got some trades out there, let's get more of a balance. We're not a balance. Like you said, we can't close. The reason why we can't close at the game, we're not a balanced team. We start off great. In the second half, we're doing pretty. The third quarter, we kind of the wheels just fall off. In the fourth quarter, it just continue out. We definitely need to balance it out. I think we need to go out there and hopefully we can bring in a little bit more balance, bring in some size. Andrew Bynum, we talked about that. Maybe we could bring Andrew Bynum to give us some size in here to work with all these little guards that we have that supposedly be great shooters.
I got an idea. They ought to bring Jimmy Graham in and pay him a little extra money.
He got 6 fouls.
I'm telling you,
the guy 6 fouls.
He can be a 3.
He got 6 fouls.
Well, you know, I mean, I look at the games and I go to the game, but my whole thing is what we need more than anything is guys playing together, and that's what they don't do. I mean, they always got assignment. You know, they walk the ball up. They playing old style ball. You know what I mean? You see the Heats, LeVar and them, they run down and they score and they play. We just got to turn it loose and go play basketball. We more, you know, in a controlled system where everybody, you know, trying to figure out something, and that's what's killing us.
I got a question for the panel here. Okay, Monty Williams, whether you like it or not, is probably on the hot seat. Now, he's got built-in excuses here with injuries to some key starters. But how long do you stay with Monty Williams? This
how
club
long
is.
do you stay with Dell Demps?
And with Dell Demps.
You gave them both long-term deals.
Absolutely, Kenny. And this club is destined to, like I said, they're going to be hard-pressed to win 25, 26 games this year.
Rick, you hit it on the head. He's trying to make these players play his style. Right. We had a team full of guards. We should have been running up and down the court. We should be pushing the ball. We should be.
They have a roster of young players who can run.
Exactly.
That's what they have.
We should be. I tell you what, Mac D'Antoni should be down here. Well, that's who should be coaching and running.
The same thing here with the last 2 or 3 coaches. I mean, they want to control the game. They want the game to be about them. They don't want to let the guys do what they do best. And that's what I see going on the same thing now.
Yeah, sign up a good coach is maximizing his players' talent. And I don't think we're getting that right now.
It's easy to criticize, and I'm all for Monty Williams and want to see him succeed. Do I have questions about him? Yes, I do. Given the sample size we've had, which is pretty large, absolutely excuses with these injuries, but here's what is telling. You mentioned the Houston game, Brian, and not only did they control that game for 3.5 quarters, they should have won it, but down the stretch, James Harden scores 8 points of their last 11 in the last 2.5 minutes. He's their best player. Meanwhile, for the Pelicans, who took their last 2 shots when they were down by 1, Jason Smith, a 15-footer, and then their last shot, a called play, was set up and designed for Darius Miller. Darius Miller. Need I say any more? That's what the coach devised in that circumstance. Don't get it. Back in just a moment as we continue with sportsNOLatv from Don's Seafood, where the food is awesome. Ask any one of them, they'll tell you. And always crowded and always delicious. We're here. You should be too. Don's Seafood, 4801 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie between Clearview and Transcontinental, 889-1550. Don's has stood the test of time because Don's is based on traditional family recipes that are as mouth-watering today as when Don Landry first opened his restaurant in 1934. It's Don's Seafood. Come check it out and enjoy it. Prep Recruiting Insider, we're getting closer to signing date. You need to tune in to PRI Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Renee Nadeau, Ro Brown will break it down. Regardless of what your fan affiliation is, you'll enjoy PRI. You'll also enjoy breaking down the NFL and the Super Bowl on the John Forcade Show with Mike Metairie, presented by Ray Brandt, Thursday, 6 p.m. here on WHNO Channel 20. Super Bowl is set. It's Denver, it's Seattle. It's a virtual pick'em game. So let's start with Torrance. Torrance, your early thought. Who do you like?
Oh, I'm going with Peyton Manning and Denver Broncos. I'm a big Peyton fan. Love to see him play.
Brian.
My initial thoughts are the weather. I want to see what the weather's going to be like. They say it's going to be in the teens, windy, which doesn't necessarily favor Peyton. Sorry I have to say that, but we'll see what happens. Weather's going to play a big role in it.
I'm always going to go with Peyton.
All right. My initial thought is Seattle, and the weather does play into it. We'll see what it turns out to be. Gentlemen, thank you. Always a pleasure. For Brian, for Torrance, for Rickey, I'm Ken. God bless you one and all. So long. Until next time.